What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and this is the season or series finale of Something Very Bad is Going to Happen. This is it? Episode 8. Recap. Thoughts on the series, wrapping it up. What's my grade? Now you get to find out what the grade is going to be. Dun dun dun. All right. There's audio description, International Digital Center, narrated by Julian, who's been doing the whole time, all the way through. And like, honestly, is it that gory? Like, it just seems like a lot of people are like bleeding out of things in this episode. So if there is gore, I felt like it was kind of tame, to be honest. It just felt like a lot of bleeding. Considering like in episode 4, like we get, the past with Rachel's mother getting cut open and a baby coming out and like that whole thing. I kind of feel like this was on the tamer side, like a lot of blood, but it just feels like people are bleeding out all over. So if you're just like squeamish at just the sign of blood, but I was expecting like exploding heads or something, like let's melt some faces or I don't know, something. But um, so it's wedding day. Rachel is ready to get married to Nikki, goes up to the altar. Boris is going to marry them, the dad, and starts the proceedings. And Rachel is, they wrote their own vows, and Rachel gives this like really wonderful speech, blah, 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 blah. And then Nikki decides that his grand gesture is going to be to not marry Rachel, which, as we learned, is how the curse transfers from family to family. So it's great news for Rachel because then she's off the hook. Because in that regard, she was willing to marry Nikki, but Nikki wasn't willing to marry her. So sort of like how the witness walked away from the marriage, and so it transferred to the girl who he was going to marry's family and her lineage, which was Rachel's parentage. Now it's transferred to Nikki. So Nikki's family starts to die. And it starts with like, obviously not the main cast. So basically every other random person who's in attendance at the wedding, like the whole wedding party, they all start dying. People are dying like who aren't even there, just Nikki's lineage, all because he said no. So they go back and they fight and they have this big fight. And it's also revealed in this process that um, Rachel did not drink the concoction that she made. She cut off her toe for no reason and decided to just go on faith alone that Nikki is her soulmate. She just wanted to believe that going in. But obviously now through all of that, she's lost that faith, and Nikki, is obviously struggling with the concept as well because he doesn't believe her. He doesn't believe the curse is real. Wake up call, bro, because everybody out there is dying. So, so Nikki is like his family comes in. Jules is running around trying to find his son who is hiding under the table watching all these people die. Sort of like how he was a witness to the stuff before. So he comes and gets his kid and goes and sets him in a room and turns on the TV and turns it up and is like, don't go outside, don't leave this room and don't open the door unless it's me or your mom. So so he sits there and watches TV for the remainder of the episode, basically. And Rachel is when Nikki tries to mend things because his family is like, look around you. Portia comes in because it started to affect her. She's starting to bleed. We see Victoria die well, not off screen because we see her, but she's like away from everybody. She goes back into her room and she's bleeding, so she dies, but she was already going to die anyway. And she has this fight with Boris about after the wedding about how Boris denied her what she wanted, like her, the wedding and the finale, and this finale of her life. Um, but she still goes and dies. So I think she's the only main cast member that dies. Anyway, I think everybody else is like a much smaller cast member. Although it's debatable about what's happening to Portia, because Portia's in the process of dying when Nikki proposes, and I didn't quite catch what happened to Portia. She probably still died. Like, I don't know, she's bleeding internally already. So, Nikki finds Rachel and basically just forces the ring onto her hand and says, "I do," and his dad pronounces them. And she's like, "Well, I don't." And the witness says, "But you already said you did, so it doesn't matter." And so the curse reverts as much as it can at this point. And so Rachel is now affected again. So Rachel starts to bleed, and then she dies. So it's insinuated that that Boris had a lethal injection ready for himself to follow his wife into the dark. He really loved that Death Cab for Cutie song. Not really. Just made me think of it. But so Boris probably went off to do that. But it's actually insinuated that Jules and Nell are fine, despite the fact that there was a mention of them getting divorced. Jules had never signed the paper. So I guess Jules believed that Nell was still his soulmate, was still in love with her. And so it works out for them because they live. Nikki is still alive, but he's like catatonic when we see him from all the stuff that he caused. And so the next morning, Rachel rises from the dead, and we find out that the witness has passed on, and now Rachel's the witness. So she goes in and she gets her lighter, and from her bedroom with Nikki. Nikki won't speak to her or anything. It's just catatonic. On her way out, she tells Jude, Jules's kid, that remember this day when you think about marrying someone, and I'll be there to witness it. And she vows to be a different kind of witness and try to, I don't know, prevent the rest of the lineage from dying or something. I don't know. They set it up so they could do future seasons of this if they want to. I didn't really like the first season that much to keep going down more seasons. But, I mean, there's some cool sort of thoughts and imagery, a lot to do with the fox. There's the fox that they pass sort of at the end, the one that was, that chewed its own leg off to try to survive. When you think back to the fox that we saw in the first episode in the bathroom that was like splayed open, that she sees, there's been a lot of like hints at things along the way. But if I'm breaking down the series now, thinking about like my grade and all that kind of stuff, it's so weird that this character is written this way, that everything's for convenience and nothing feels narratively strong in this. The fact that Rachel even met Nikki, you know what I'm saying? Like, Rachel was born in a cabin, like not too far from their house, went off and lived her life, ran into Nikki at an airport, and agreed to marry him and came back to the same place that is like a hop, skip, and a jump away from where her mother died and Rachel was born. And her dad like brings her back there to like there's an entire world, there's an entire America to go to. And the most interesting thing they thought would be to have everybody coming to the same area. The witness is still here. And then they had that episode where they broke into the clerk's office and looked at wedding licenses and everything. And it was like Rachel's entire family lineage is in this area. Like she just keeps coming back to it, but she clearly was disassociated from her lineage. She hasn't spoken to her dad in a long time. Her mom died when she was born. She wouldn't have strong ties to any sort of area. She's not from this area because it was her mom's side of the family. So her dad, even as a child, wouldn't have raised her in the same area in which her mom. Anyway, so like the series doesn't make any sense, and uh, yet it persists, and yet it never justifies the location. It never justifies why Rachel stayed, why Rachel wasn't like noticing how odd it was for her to be drawn back to this very specific location. They never really addressed that because it's either a really bad thing or it's either a really good thing. It means that either she and Nikki were always fated to be together because it's like Jules was there when she was born. Jules watched Rachel being pulled from her mother, and she doesn't find that weird or unnerving or suggestive, and they never talk about it in sort of like an existential way as like how does this affect my reality. There's a lot of things here that they brush on, that they bring up. They're like, ooh, this is cool for the story. And it's like, it sounds cool, but it also doesn't make a damn bit of sense when you actually put things together. So when you start laying things out like that to try to build up some sort of lore for the show, you actually do have to make things make sense. You can't just throw lore out for lore's sake. You actually have to tie it back in and have sort of reasonable reactions from characters, strong characters that hopefully you built from the beginning. I felt like the Rachel that we saw that was bold enough to try to, help this baby whose parents were off walking or whatever, and ventured off on her own to try to, in the middle of the night, and even after she saw the creepy crap in the bathroom, all that, um, and hearing the creepy podcast, that she still did all that. Like that strong person finds herself at one point saying that she can change for Nikki, and but what is happening to her character? So, I think the first two episodes are really well done. They hold tension really well, um, and then it just kind of goes downhill from there. I liked episode 7. I like the way that it was directed. I don't like what it contained, but I liked how it was directed. I thought it was directed really well. And even episode 4, the flashback episode, I thought was had some elements to it that weren't terrible. So it's not all a complete waste. As far as performances go, I think Camilla Morone does the best that she can with Rachel, which is written as being all over the place. So it's sort of a strong lead performance. Honestly, I think Jennifer Jason Leigh and Ted Levine are kind of wasted in their roles. They don't get quite the scenes and the moments that they should, but they're fine. But if we're talking about their filmography, they'd certainly have had more complicated roles than this. Um, so I I thought I was leaning positive on this, and then I got to the finale and I was looking for an exit. I was looking for a door that said, well, this is how we make everything make sense. And I don't think we really got that. Instead, they were far more interested in leaving it open for another season, far more interested in saying, well, we don't want to kill everybody, and we want to, I don't. need another season if something very bad is going to happen. Just like I don't need another season of brand new cherry flavor. If you have a strong enough limited series, that was something that Mike Flanagan really seemed to understand, is that his shows were contained and told really well in one season, so that even if you appreciated and wanted another season of it, you wanted it because it was so good, but not because it would have made any narrative sense to do a second season for his shows. Like Midnight Mass is terrific, but what would even a second season of that be? And same thing with, Haunting Hill House and Bly Manor. It's like, where would you go with those shows? So, unfortunately, the Duffer Brothers have figured out how to extend the life out of Stranger Things far past what they initially wanted. Um, so I remember when they got picked up for a fourth season, they were saying at that time that they had only 3 seasons planned. So to extend to a fourth season was already an extension. Then they extended to a fifth season. So it's like, okay. And it feels like something very bad is going to happen is influenced by people who have learned how to franchise and have learned how to extend and have learned how to withhold facts so that that way you feel like you have to come back for something else. Unfortunately, you set up a story where there are a lot of sort of big questions about like how we got here to begin with. Why is everyone in the same place? Why does everybody keep getting married in the same county? Why were all the records available to Rachel in the same place? Why was that even a thing? How does one family, because she's not from there, that's not her area, but her whole family keeps getting married in the same area. It's very weird. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to go fresh on something very bad is going to happen. And then at the end, I thought they kind of just went like, I was like, that was it, like with the gore, and I think maybe because I did it episodically, broke it down, we recapped it over the course of time. I know some people binge watched it, so when they were talking about the finale is crazy, I was like, I don't know, is it really? Is it really that crazy? Or is it kind of, you know, I don't know. I was expecting like them to amp up the horror and the gore, but I guess it sounds bloody, whatever. But it didn't feel like they really were going for anything strong, like anything just shocking, just purely shocking. I mean, other than the fact that a lot of people die, but pure body count alone. Yeah, so I'm gonna give it a 5.5 out of 10. It's close. It's close to fresh. There are elements of it, there are episodes that I liked. There are little bits and pieces here and there, but overall I wouldn't recommend it. If somebody was like, what do you think about something very bad is gonna happen? It's not worth the time. It's not worth the 8 episodes. It introduces a lot of things that it doesn't ever actually explain or close off that don't really make any sense, just so that it can get through the payoff. It thinks that its gimmick is why you're there, but for a lore building show, part of that is to understand the universe in which you're building it and explain it. uh, what would this show look like if they had gone on a destination wedding? If Nikki and Jules had been super excited to get married, so they were in Hawaii, and she didn't have access to her family records because nobody had ever been married in Hawaii before. Um, what would that have looked like? How would that have changed the story if she didn't have access to her generational family history and known and been able to contact grandmother and stuff like that through the and get the concoction and everything. So would you have had to write her differently so that she did know, or that she could text somebody or call somebody? I just think there's a better way to do the show than what we did it. And that is the strongest reason to not give a fresh score. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you guys on the other side.